Everybody, welcome back. We're visiting with Brad Baldridge, and he's helping us understand the cost of college, but more importantly, he's here to help advise us how we can make sure that that child of ours or our grandchild are able to eventually get to college and be able to afford it without going into deep, deep debt. And Brad, I got to tell you, I think every parent wants the best for their kids. So everybody wants to send them to Harvard if they could. But you know, you had mentioned before the break that there's so many different choices. And when you advise people, maybe you could walk us through this. What do you take a look at? If I were to come to you, Brad, and say, I got to get something done for my kid, he's got to go to college, where do we start?
The first kind of big picture things that families need to understand is there's need-based aid and there's merit aid. And those are two big pieces of the puzzle for some families. Some will get merit, some will get need, some will get both. Some won't get any of those. And that's the challenge, right? So need-based aid is what a lot of us are familiar with, even as parents when we went to college. We fill out the FAFSA form. Based on the FAFSA, they determine how much you can afford to pay or what's fair for your family. And then they might offer you some aid based on your income and assets of your family. Then there's merit aid, which is often based on the academic achievements of the student. You know, if you have high test scores and great grades, you have opportunities at scholarships at some colleges. At other colleges, maybe having great grades and fantastic test scores will barely get you accepted. Now they're not going to offer you any money, but they'll at least accept you. So that's the challenge again, is where is your student a good fit, and where are they likely to qualify for need-based aid? Where are they likely to qualify for merit aid? And learning that process is kind of the parent's job. Most students have, pretty clueless when it comes to how financial aid works. Most parents are too at the start, but it's kind of your job to start understanding, well, will we qualify for need-based aid? Will we qualify for merit aid? What types of schools are likely to give us those types of aid? And then what will our ultimately net price be? Because that's the reality of it. Is there's a lot of colleges out there that have a list price that's nowhere near what you actually pay once it's all done. Other schools, you're much closer to the list price. So, sometimes it's list 60,000 and you pay 20. Sometimes it's list 60 and you pay 50. And it's hard to figure out which college is which without diving deep and really understanding the process and doing your homework, doing the shopping.
Are these questions you ask who exactly? You pick your college, maybe you pick two or three, and who are you talking to at the colleges to determine what the bottom line is?
I think that's the challenge. So the colleges have a good idea of how it works, but generally they don't want to do all the work until you've applied and been accepted. So certainly at the end of the process, they're going to show you, this is your final price based on everything that we've talked about. In order to get that information ahead of time, you can work with the colleges. The colleges have what's called net price calculators on their website. I certainly work with families all the time to help them understand how the pricing works and give them a good idea of what the price might be ahead of time versus at the very end of the process. But it's a lot of work and it's relatively hard to do. Kind of like when we used to go shopping for a car, we had no information. And the internet came along, and now all of a sudden we've got list prices and we look up stuff, and there's the Blue Book online, and we're starting to get that with colleges, but it's not very complete and it's not very accurate. So again, families are a little bit of a disadvantage that they don't have all the information, but the college does. So unfortunately, that's where we're at.
But you're talking some serious money. It's worth the effort. In fact, if I were to sit down with you today, what do you suppose the cost would be for my child who's 1 year old today for college, 20 years from now? What are we talking about?
So the average state school today is about 28,000. You mentioned in your state it was about 25. There's high cost states and lower cost states. It varies between 22 and probably 32 or 34. New York, New Jersey, California have some pretty expensive schools. And then low cost, Iowa and here in Wisconsin and a number of places where the list price is quite a bit lower. And then of course, all the privates, and they vary between, 40,000 to 90,000. Again, all these numbers are total cost of attendance, which is tuition, room and board, books, fees, beer and pizza. The typical cost for a typical student for a typical year of college. And yes, that is 1 year.
Did you say beer and pizza? Is that included?
I did for the seniors.
But how much does a family have to save if that's our goal, is to provide financial assistance? I mean, how do you determine 20 years from now how much money you're going to need? Because, well, it constantly increases. And that sticker shock has got to be, in dollars 20 years from now, is got to be significant. Any idea what that is? I'm not going to hold you to it if you're wrong.
No, I really don't. Because, I mean, so behind the scenes, people need to be aware. So the last 20 years, college has gotten very expensive very quickly.
Right.
But that trend can't continue because it's just mathematically impossible for families to be able to afford that. So what we're seeing now is a lot of colleges are raising their prices, but they're also raising their scholarships and raising their aid to help offset those prices for people that need it. States are doing the same thing, where they're continuing to raise the price of the state schools, but they're providing merit scholarships or need-based scholarships or various other forms of aid that, for the right kids, yes, the price went up by $5,000, but you also got $5,000 more in aid. So it's a very complex game, unfortunately. But I think the bottom line is prices can't go up like they did for the last 20 years. I don't think that's going to happen. The list price might go up, but the net price that people pay, we're kind of at that ceiling now, where there's a lot of families out there that just say we can't make it work, or it's not worth it. And, again, 20 years ago, everybody said, well, college is the golden ticket, right? Just go get a degree. Doesn't matter what it is, how you do it, and life will be fantastic. Well, we've gotten to the point now where spending unlimited amounts of money on college is not always the right thing to do. You need to do it reasonably. You need to have the right degrees. You need to have the right student who will take advantage of that opportunity and not just go through the motions. So I think that makes it much more complicated, right? Because the answer to most questions around college is it depends. It depends on the student. It depends on the school. It depends on all kinds of factors. And that means you got to do the planning more, because the way it worked for your brother-in-law or your neighbor is not going to be the way it works for you, most likely.
Well, I'm glad you're around. And we have one more segment, so we're going to talk a little bit more about this. In fact, there are some key categories. Maybe we can highlight some of those for our viewers. And, maybe if they're out there and they're looking for somebody to help them, maybe you have some advice as to what they should be looking for in somebody like you. So, Brad, hang in there. We'll be right back.